For decades, this billionaire answered every question. People asked him about success, about money, about discipline, about leadership, about how to win in business and stay on top. And yet there was one subject he never addressed directly, not once, not in interviews, not in books, not even in conversations with people who were closest to him. A subject so carefully avoided that most people never realized it was missing at all. Because when someone speaks confidently about everything else, silence becomes invisible. And that silence protected a truth he never wanted to explain, not because it was illegal, not because it would send him to prison, but because it would change the way people understood his entire story. And once that illusion was broken, it could never be rebuilt. From the outside, his life looked almost flawless. A perfect arc of ambition rewarded by intelligence and patience, a rise that felt inevitable, as if success had always been waiting for him. And the world accepted that version because it was comforting, because it suggested that wealth follows effort in a clean, logical way. But beneath the narrative was a reality he never talked about, something he learned early and carried with him silently for the rest of his life, shaping every decision he made while never being spoken out loud. What makes this story unsettling isn't that he hid the truth, but how long he was able to do it. Even as cameras followed him, reporters analyzed him, and millions of people tried to reverse engineer his success without ever realizing they were missing the most important piece. Early in his career, long before the world knew his name, he found himself facing a moment that would define everything that came after. Not a dramatic moment filled with applause or recognition, but a quiet realization that came from watching someone else fail. Someone who was just as talented, just as driven, but who made one mistake that cost him everything. That mistake wasn't lack of effort or poor intelligence or bad luck. It was honesty at the wrong time. He watched as opportunities disappeared, partnerships dissolved, and doors closed. Not because the ideas were bad, but because the truth was shared too early with people who weren't ready to hear it, or who had incentives to use it against him. And in that moment, he understood something that would stay with him forever. Some truths don't set you free. They expose you. From that point on, he built a habit that shaped his entire career. A rule he never wrote down, never taught publicly, and never admitted to following. The rule of selective silence, knowing exactly what to say, when to say it, and more importantly, what never needed to be explained at all. As his influence grew, this silence became more refined. He learned how to answer questions without answering them, how to sound transparent while revealing nothing essential, how to turn interviews into performances that satisfied curiosity without feeding it. And the more successful he became, the more valuable that skill grew. What he never talked about was how many of his biggest advantages came not from innovation, but from withholding information, delaying clarity, and letting others move without fully understanding the terrain they were stepping into. He never explained how often competitors underestimated him because they believed his public story, how partners made decisions based on incomplete pictures, or how entire markets shifted while people were still debating surface-level narratives he allowed to exist. This wasn't manipulation in the dramatic sense, but it was control, quiet, patient, and extremely effective. People assume power comes from speaking loudly, from dominating conversations, from being visible. But he learned the opposite, that real leverage often comes from restraint, from knowing when silence creates more confusion than any lie ever could. As years passed and his fortune grew, this unspoken rule followed him everywhere, in negotiations, in friendships, even in philanthropy. Because once you understand how much information shapes outcomes, you stop giving it away freely. And yet something strange happened later in his life as his position became unchallenged and his legacy secure. The pressure to maintain the illusion slowly faded. And while he never openly revealed the truth, cracks began to appear in the way he spoke. He started making comments that felt oddly detached, remarks about transparency being overrated, about how people demand honesty, but punish it when it disrupts their expectations. about how the world claims to value truth but rewards timing far more than sincerity. To most people, these sounded like abstract observations, the kind of philosophical thoughts successful people share when reflecting on life. But to those paying close attention, they were something else entirely, not explanations, but signals. Signals that the thing he never talked about wasn't a single event, or deal, or secret transaction, but a mindset, one that shaped his rise more than any single investment ever did. The truth he never revealed was simple, uncomfortable, and incredibly powerful. Information is not meant to be shared equally, and those who control when truth appears often control outcomes as well. He understood that success isn't just about making the right moves, but about deciding which parts of your journey the world gets to see, and which parts remain undefined long enough for you to move without resistance. By the time people began to sense that something had been left unsaid, it no longer mattered. Because the structure was already built, the influence was already locked in, and the silence that once protected him had done its job. This doesn't make him a villain, but it does challenge the version of success most people believe in, because it suggests that transparency, while admirable, is not always rewarded, and that timing the truth can be as important as the truth itself. So the question this story leaves behind isn't whether he was right or wrong, but whether success at the highest level is even possible without learning when to stay silent. And if the roles were reversed, if you had the same knowledge and the same opportunity, would you choose honesty at all costs? Or would you protect your future by never talking about the thing that mattered most? If you want more stories about the hidden rules of wealth, the unspoken decisions that shape fortunes long before anyone is watching, make sure to subscribe, because the next story reveals how a billionaire built an empire by doing the exact opposite of what everyone was taught, and the consequences were far greater than anyone expected.